What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of Bogey Free. We are coming, well, not we, just me this week. We're coming at you with some military tribute at the Greenbrier action for this week's slate. Flying solo this afternoon because I'm currently on vacation, but I wanted to make sure that I got in a show this week and gave you some of my thoughts for this week's slate. Before I jump into that, big shout out to Trade K3. Just about broke 500 points this week and cleared the field by almost 30 in the listener league. So congrats, good on you. And let's quickly talk about the course. As always, you can go over to Fanshare and check out Jimmy's course preview video that he does every week. He does a great job with it. And you could definitely get some more info there if you're looking for it. But the basics here, it's a par 70, plays right around 7,300 yards. As far as like stats I'm targeting this week, it's really all about ball striking. Driving distance, it gets you a little bit of a knock for course fit versus driving accuracy, which gives you a very, very slight bump. It's basically neutral. I think it costs you about 1.5 if you are top 10 in driving distance, and it gains you about 1.5 if you're top 10 in driving accuracy. So not really a significant bump, in either direction. So let's just quickly blow through this slate here. I'll get back to vacation, and you guys can check out the articles that we're putting up for Fantasy Football Factory, and all those, the one that Jimmy does for DFS Report, to get his thoughts if you're looking for his thoughts and trying to fade some of some of my ideas. So as we look through the top of this field, we definitely have some guys who have some great course history. If you're going to target that, it's really not going to help you make a decision this week, whether you're looking at Finau, who has 2 top 15s here. Phil had a top 20 last year. Bubba has a couple of top 15s. Webb has a 3rd place and a bunch of top 15, 10-ish. Henley has 2 top 5s in a row. And obviously Xander won here last year for, I guess, sort of his breakthrough performance. That and the U.S. Open were probably his 2 big ones to sort of put him on the map last year. If you're not into course history, like I've sort of been fading it recently. It's sort of, to me, it's sort of just as difficult to sort of parse these guys out this week. Even if I dip down and include Neiman in this group, you definitely have some guys that have shown some upside recently. And really from Neiman up, all these guys except for Xander are in the top 10 in DraftKings points over the past 24 rounds. So you're definitely looking at guys that can score in general and perform well for PGA purposes, but also for DraftKings purposes. Given the weakness of this field, there's not even a guy in the top 10 official world golf rankings this week. So given the sort of, I don't know, what's the opposite? What's the opposite of top heavy? The lack of top heaviness in this field. Once you get down to the bottom and you start getting into like the, I don't know, probably there's a couple guys I like at 7,000, but probably once you get below 7,000, there's not really a lot of guys that I'm comfortable rostering and taking shots on. But I really want to figure out a way to get Finau in my lineup. So as the week goes on, definitely follow along and see, I guess, if I change my mind on any of these guys. But for the most part, I'm really trying to stick with a little bit more of a balanced lineup. And truth be told, I probably won't be playing much this week. I obviously just mentioned I am on vacation, but not only that, it's just this is a week where you could see, I don't know, you could see a Finau or you could see a Phil or a Bubba sort of just run away with this. But at the same time, you could also see some random guy in the 7,000s get hot and just sort of take control early, and see a lot of these guys just sort of, I don't know, sort of fade away. So I'll definitely be trying to find a way to get Finau and Mickelson into some lineups, just because I think they're the two best golfers in this field. I know people will say Bubba based on how he played recently, but I don't know. I'm still. I'd rather just for $500. I would rather just stay on my brand and play Finau. So if I'm not going to go with them, I could definitely see Xander doing well here, and I can definitely see Niemann sort of continuing his I don't know. I guess his upswing. It looks like maybe he can figure out a way to be more consistent. He obviously has the talent to factor in really in any tournament. I mean, it's not like he hasn't performed well in big fields. Like Memorial was a pretty decent field, and he played real well there. I think it's been 7 starts for him since he turned pro after the Masters, and he's had four top 20s and 3 missed cuts. So he's sort of been, I joked last week, he's sort of been like a walking GPP recently, but I don't think that that's, I don't know. I don't think that that's something that's going to continue. I think he'll start to stabilize. And even if he's giving you consistent top 20, 25s, I think you can live with that. He was great off the tee last week, but really sort of struggled around the green and probably could have snuck into the top 10 if he could have, just had a little bit of a bump around the green. Nothing. He didn't need anything crazy. Just a couple more up and downs here and there, and he could have done pretty well. At least from what I saw. So Niemann is definitely in play for me this week. I am definitely going to be rostering a heavy dose of Charles Howell. He's at 9,300 in this field, and from like a cut equity perspective, I don't really know how you can not be trying to play this guy. He does have so course history here. But I think he's playing really consistent golf lately. And for 9,300, I think I would definitely take him over, although Harman did play well at the Travelers, I would take Howell over Harman, and I would definitely take him over Jimmy Walker. I think Walker is fading a little bit. He had a couple like top 5s, and then he slipped to like a top 20, and now he's been in like outside the top 50 over the past 2 events that he's played in. And last week he was just at the awful on approach. He made up for it around the greens a little bit with the short game, but his approach game, he lost over 6 strokes on approach, which is just god awful. So I will be fading that for sure. And I can't really decide where I land on Ryan Moore at this point. He's rating highly in my model, and I want to believe, but he definitely burned a lot of people at the Travelers. So that's going to be something that could affect his ownership potentially. I'm still not entirely sure where I land with that. He's number 1 or 2 in this field over the last 24 rounds in strokes gained approach, ball striking, bogey avoidance, par 4s from 400 to 450, which is there's 6 of them on this course. So he's definitely doing things well that you need to do well here overall recently, but his last time out, he didn't really show that. So that's something that could be a little bit concerning, but given the rest of this field, I think his price at 8,900 is pretty reasonable. Streelman was great last week for I guess for a little burst there, at least when he shot the I guess he shot a 62 on Friday or Saturday. It's just his short game too has been awful. Like he lost almost 6 strokes between around the green and putting last week. He lost over 2 strokes at the Travelers, but he's still grinding. He gained a ton of strokes off the tee this past week. So if he could continue to do that and fix some of his around the green woes, that would definitely go a long way for him. He's definitely in cash consideration for me at this point. I don't think, like I said, I don't think I want to dip down too low. So a balanced lineup in cash is probably where I'm going to land. And his approach game has been solid. So I'll definitely be considering sort of a Howell Streelman start to a lot of my lineups, just to get some cut equity and get some relative safety compared to some of these other guys up in this range. As we keep going down, Snedeker is a guy who definitely caught my attention a little bit. He missed the cut at the Travelers, obviously, with some pretty decent ownership, almost double-digit ownership. So that might scare some people off. And he's definitely been up and down really since returning from the injury, I guess. Like scrolling back through, he really hasn't done a heck of a lot this year so far. But I think a weak field like this at this course could do him some good. I think he has some fit here. I don't know how well he's played here. He hasn't played here since 2012, and he was a top 40-ish. So nothing to hang your hat on there either. But I don't know. I guess it's more of a gut play than anything else. You keep going down. You have Lahiri there. Hasn't played this course before, but definitely has a lot of form coming in. He's been playing pretty well. 2 top 15s over his last 2 starts. He was definitely saved by his putter last week. Actually, he gained over 7 strokes putting last week while losing strokes on approach for the first time since May. So that would be something that might give me a little bit of pause. But again, in a field like this, I think I'm going to bet on talent, and I think Lahiri has some good form and is a talented guy. He's 17th in DraftKings points over the past 24 rounds. So he's definitely somebody worth considering. And then as you keep going down, Brian Gay is another guy who has really played well. He missed the cut at Valero back in April. And since then, he's made 6 straight cuts or 7 straight cuts. And again, a guy who's sort of been saved by his putter, but he's been basically neutral on approach, and his short game has been just excellent lately. So he's another guy that I'll definitely be considering at 8,100. I think it would be pretty shocking to me if he missed the cut here. So that's sort of stability he'd be an interesting guy as well to maybe stack up with a Howell or somebody like that and get some more cut equity. As we keep going, I'm definitely going to spread this out a little bit more. I think there's only really 5 or 6 guys that popped out to me so far. Ryan Armour obviously had a spike week last week, came runner up, did unbelievable on approach, pretty sustainable putting, maybe not for him, but pretty sustainable putting overall. For the week, gaining around 4 strokes. That's a reasonable number. It's not a 7 or an 8 or a 9 strokes gained putting, which is just an outrage, and not something that anybody can keep up. And he's performed well on these par 4s, this length par 4s that he's going to need to do this week. So that's definitely somebody I'm considering. As we keep going, Ted Potter is like the course history poster boy. I'm sure that at some point on Thursday or Friday, I'm going to be getting tweets directed at me about course history for that very purpose with some Ted Potter. So I know if Jimmy listens, he'll be happy that I mentioned his boy this week. 7,600. Maybe I would feel better if he was more in like the 7,200 range. But again, pretty weak field. Well, very weak field, probably the weakest that we've seen in a while, but I don't know, maybe a share or 2 of him wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Joel Dahman is coming in with some controversy. If you haven't seen it, look it up on Twitter. There was a thing with him and I think Sung Kang, some allegations of cheating from last week. Where Kang took a drop or something along those lines. So check that out if you haven't seen it. It's pretty interesting for that to be happening in golf. You don't see guys calling each other out that much for things like that, but definitely give that a look if you are interested in some of the drama that's been going on this Monday morning. But yeah, for Dahman, his strokes gained approach, he's gained at least 3.5 on approach in 4 of his last 5 events, which is great. The putter hasn't popped at all. So once the putter shows up with his approach game recently, I think you could be looking at a pretty safe top 25. And if the putter goes even a little bit better, who knows? Maybe he sneaks into the top 10. At his price, what is he, 7,500? That's definitely something worth considering. Maybe some JJ Spawn could make a little bit of sense. Answers coming off a pretty great week where he ended up in the final group on Sunday. He faded a bit, obviously. Not that it mattered because nobody was catching Molinari, but he was up there, spiked a little bit, does well on this length par 4. CT Pan is another guy who seems to be sort of figuring it out. Putter's been pretty neutral. He's been gaining strokes on approach recently. So he's another guy who looks to be sort of bouncing back into form after that miscut up in Connecticut. Sorry, just going to take a sip here. And then you keep going. I don't think I'm going to trust Bill Haas this week. I think there's still something wrong there. It's definitely an enticing price at 7,200 for him, but I just don't know how you feel comfortable rostering him at this point. I think he made the cut on the number or maybe a stroke better and then just really faded over the weekend. He's outside of the top 100 in most of the things that I've been targeting this week. So if you're not going to go there at 7,200, I wouldn't blame you. I think JT Poston makes a little bit. Poston, I still don't know how to say it. He makes a little bit of sense. He's made 4 of his last 5 cuts. Sort of hovering around neutral with his approach game. But I think that could be trending back into the right direction. And he's obviously been grinding out cuts. So I think he makes an interesting GPP play. Nothing too crazy. One guy at 7,000 that I really like is Bronson Burgoon, especially for a GPP. Obviously, I mean, he's been sort of going back and forth between like top 25s, a couple miscuts, 16th, couple miscuts. He just popped again for a 6th place finish. But again, this is another guy whose putter didn't even have his putter really. He didn't even gain a full stroke putting last week. So you're looking at a guy whose ball striking is coming around. His around the green game is on point. He gained almost 3 strokes there. So a little bit of a pop with his putter. And you could, again, be looking at a guy for this price, 7,000 in this field, that could make a lot of sense. So he's somebody that I'll be looking at. I just popped into the chat. Thanks, Rusty. Thanks, Dad. Yes, I am back to beer drinking on vacation. The last guy that I would mention in the 7K range would probably be Connors. Again, not by any means going to be a cash play for me, but his approach game, 3 of the last 4 times he's gained over 3 strokes on approach. His putter has just been awful. Again, I'm not in the business of trying to predict putting, so I will gladly fade that. And again, a guy finishes neutral with gaining 4 or 5 strokes on the field on approach, and you're looking at a top 25 a lot of weeks. So that's definitely somebody to consider as well. Outside of that, I mean, I'm kind of still scrolling through here. I know Jimmy would have like 5 or 6 guys that you could consider in a GPP. I mean, a lot of times down here, I will look a little bit more at course history. And for that, you're looking at like, I don't know, a Chad Campbell who had a top 10, and Nick Taylor who had a top 10 down here last year. David Hearn had a runner-up a couple years ago and a top 15 last year. I don't know. There's not a hell of a lot to like really down here. Definitely nobody that's really safe by any means for sure. But Robert Garrigus played well last week. I had him in the listener league lineup that did okay last week. He was 27th. Again, he's lost. Let's see. He's averaging over 2.5 strokes gained putting lost. And he's lost for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight weeks, and 8 out of the last 10. So, and it bad too, like 3 strokes, 6 strokes, 4 strokes. So a neutral, you get him neutral, and he finishes 27th last week. He even finished in the top 20 in Memphis, despite losing over 6 strokes putting. So you're looking at a guy who can grind out. His approach game has been on. He's 6th in strokes gained approach over his last 24 rounds. So he makes a little bit of sense. Vaughn Taylor is up there as well in strokes gained approach. He's hitting it close from the right proximity for this course, so he's a guy that could make a little bit of sense in a GPP. I wouldn't really recommend going too far down here. Sort of after you get to that point, you're really looking at guys like, I don't know, like Jeff Ogilvy and Summer Hayes and Scott Brown and those kind of guys who you really can't trust this in any format. At least I won't be. So I'll probably keep the player pool pretty tight this week, and I'll probably be playing a lot of cash if I find a comfortable balance lineup that I can get behind. And other than that, I think that's going to do it. So make sure that you follow along with us on Twitter. You find me at Matt Jones TFR, obviously, Jimmy at DFS Jimmy, and Evan over at eChaney17 or Canada DFS. Make sure you guys hop into the listener league, and we will hopefully we'll be seeing some screenshots from some of you guys or from some of us this week. So either way, good luck in your contest this week, and we will talk soon. See ya.